Today, we're going to be talking about siege marches in Age of Empires Mobile. Yes, you heard right, because it's the one question since Desolate Desert many of you guys have been asking about, because as I have noticed too, you really do want a good siege march in the Desolate Desert, because when you're fighting that flag-to-flag combat, yes, you might have beaten the enemy's rally, or you might have defended against their rally with your garrison. But what really does separate the good, actual competitive empires is how fast, after they've beaten that rally or garrison, how can they siege it down? How fast can that get sieged down? And a lot of people are using kind of war machines for that role at the moment, as well as trying to use war machines to teleport people out of the map. But a siege march is designed to destroy that durability on the flags, on the buildings, on towers of rotations, you name it. That's what they're for. So what we're going to do is talk about siege in today's video. We're going to showcase, obviously, this training lineup that's been on screen for you guys, and just give you a better kind of polished version of it, because at the moment, the only siege march that you can be running is Josephine, Hammurabi, and King Derek. And you can see down here on these skills, the Siege Breaker and Double Attack are really good skills to be running. But when we look at the Hammurabi's Siege and Plunder and Earth Crush, and King Derek's Fearless Frontrunner and Earth Crush, I'll be honest, I think that's too much Earth Crush, and I actually don't like this build, because the way they are trying to make this warrior infantry march work is to try and make it so Hammurabi's signature skill here, which inflicts a rout effect as well, while increasing your commander's might damage, with his Earth Crush, should allow a rout effect to apply in order so your King Derek can inflict increased might damage taken to the enemy. But the thing is, this march isn't designed to kill enemies. It's designed to siege. So that's where I'm coming in, and I'm going to do a couple of tweaks just with those two skills while we explain how all of this march works. Because the first thing is the rings. I'm going to be honest with you guys, the rings are super easy, because there's 3 rings in the game that are all siege based. And that is your Ring of the Rhino, which is going to be equipped to one of your commanders, aka probably your most notorious one at the top, your Josephine. Then you've got Ring of Laurel, which is just increasing siege by a flat amount, and you got the Ring of the Elephant, which is doing the same, but it increases the base amount, obviously further than the blue ring. So these rings are the only rings in game that can provide you with siege. So you are going to be wanting those rings for this march. When it comes to heroes, though, this is the lineup you want, and when it comes to Josephine, those are the correct skills. Why? Well, simply because Siege Breaker and Josephine's signature skill, if you didn't know, are secondary strike skills, which is quite nice. And the fact that it is just a secondary strike skill after launching a normal attack, this can occur, which is fantastic. And because of that, because you've got a secondary strike skill, which is Siege Breaker, and your secondary strike skill, signature skill, which is recovering units while you deal damage to, the second skill makes sense. Double attack, because that means we can potentially have 2 attacks in one turn, obviously increasing our activation chances and potentially doubling up on Siege Breaker procs, because it would be quite nasty if we was able to hit the 20% and 20% in one turn and deal basically over 300 points of damage to the city's defense, right? It's kind of disgusting when you think about how much damage this is actually going to apply to a city's walls durability, right? So it's going to nuke that fucker down. That's the best way of putting it, right? So that's what Josephine's kind of job is. She's kind of about doing that job. When we look at Hammurabi, his job's a little bit different in this role. Because when we look at him, he is got Siege and Plunder, which is increasing, again, his siege stacks while dealing damage to the city defense with siege, right? So he's dealing 174.25 damage to the city defense and increases his siege by 10.25. This stacks up to, again, 20, and this is at max rank, you can see now, 340 damage and 20 extra siege each time this triggers. Because of this, I would recommend either 2 skills, and there's only 2 skills for Hammurabi in the Siege March that I think's any good. High Spirit is the first one. Simple. Because we honestly only care about this skill on Hammurabi. We do. We only care about that skill. This does not matter at all, because we're increasing our commander's might damage, which is fantastic if he was dealing damage, but we're doing a Siege March. We don't care. We don't care about that. And you've got to kind of get that logic in your head where, okay, I get it. We don't care about might damage. We care about sieging. So because of that, you only care about High Spirit to get this siege and plunder off as often as possible. Otherwise, there's no point running Hammurabi, because the only alternate thing you could be running instead of High Spirit as the choice would be Bloodthirst, because Bloodthirst is going to recover units to your march. You don't care about the damage that you're dealing, you care about the recovery units of this march. Because if you're able to recover units as you're sieging down these city walls, for example, well, you're able to keep going and going and going and going. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to stop sieging. You want your march to stay as healthy as possible. So you and maybe a team of 5, maybe 6 players that are all got siege marchers just nuke down the flag. So you can either go down the Bloodthirst route if you want to go for more survivability in the march, or what I would recommend is High Spirit and Siege and Plunder, because this is now giving you more actual chance of getting Siege and Plunder off because of the High Spirit, and because each time we're doing our High Spirit, this is increasing the stacks too, which is even more just making Siege and Plunder more effective as a skill. So I would recommend this. This is just the skills that I would recommend, but if you want a little bit more survivability, you can go down this route. Now, King Derek. King Derek finishes off the siege marches, and this is because he again offers 1 siege ability, which is very key for the rallies, and you'll understand why I am building my siege march the way I'm building it. Because if you check out his siege skill, Fearless Front Runner, it says you increase the hero's siege by a flat amount, but when being defeated during a siege, you convert 10.25% of your lost troops into gravely wounded. So for every 1,000 troops you've lost, 100 are going back into your gravely wounded, which might not sound like much, but think about that. All the time, you've lost 10,000 troops. Guess what? 1,000 are back. That's a lot. That is a lot of troops coming back. And this is happening as you're sieging down. And you got to think, this is, again, a skill or a march designed to do one job and one job only, which is sieging down those fucking cities or flags or towers, right? It's kind of what their job is. So the fact that you're not dedicating any damage and you're kind of going for all of this siege while surviving as long as possible to get that flag killed makes a lot more sense, that you're able to convert so much of your lost units into gravely wounded because you're not dealing damage. And because of this, what I would recommend as the second skill, if you've not guessed it, is going to be Righteous Judgment. Because Righteous Judgment, after 3 seconds, deals damage to the enemy troops, but you reduce all enemy heroes' might and strategy by 17.8 points, which is a lot of points. And when you max this out, that's 60 points with a 395% damage factor. That is no laughing matter. You've got to think now, we're reducing their base stats by 6 there, meaning their scaling and their actual top enders damage kind of gone down now. We've lowered that, which is fantastic. And top of, obviously, recovering units and all of that jazz, it's given us the survivability we need from the Fearless Frontrunner, from the Hammurabi Bloodthirst, if you run that one, as well as the recovery from Josephine's signature skill. So you can kind of see with this march, I honestly don't want to build it to do route. I don't think you need route at all. What you do want is sieging, and fucking sieging, right? So in order to do that, we need to survive and make our march kind of do the job. So my recommendation for you guys, and I am going to be making a ultimate siege guide video in the next coming weeks, so keep an eye on that. I've just got other guides to make first, but I did want to cover this before that comes out. And this is going to obviously showcase the rings, the skills, and all of that jazz properly in that video. But I wanted to give you guys the video you guys have been asking for, which is a siege march. That is it. Every siege march in the game should be this until we get better heroes, which is going to be Josephine, Hammurabi, King Derek. And you're going to be running Siege Breaker, Double Attack. You're going to be running Siege Unplunder with High Spirit. And then you're going to be running Fearless Frontrunner with the Righteous Judgment on King Derek. And that's going to give you, again, an actual march that's going to deal really high siege damage to, obviously, cities, towers, flags, as well as actually surviving damage that you need to survive in order to siege down. Because you got to think, it's not your job to do damage with this march. That is the Miyamoto's damage, right? That's his job. That is the Lubu's job, right? That is the Belisarius's job in order to do damage in a rally, right? Same with the pikeman. It's the pikeman's job in the rallies potentially to do damage. But as a siege march, you're not there to do damage. You're there to siege. To build it. Build to siege and build to be the best sieger that you can be in the game. And that is this march here. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. Obviously talking about the siege march. I'm giving you a quick rundown of what to expect in the future Ultimate Guide 2025 to the siege march of choice. And that's pretty much it. The only thing I would say if you are considering it is maybe you can replace the Ring of Laurel. I'll be honest. You could maybe replace the Ring of Laurel with the Ring of the Clover, maybe the Ring of the Falcon, maybe even Tranquil Water, or even the Ring, Lofty Mountain Ring. Because all of those rings give you damage reduction or survivability, and you might need that survivability over 20 points of siege, because if you can survive for longer, you get more value out of the march than actually having just brute force siege stats, right? So that's the only other thing I would mention when it comes to it, but we can add all of that in properly in the Ultimate Guide. But a lot of you guys have been asking about it. Hopefully you enjoy it. You can see down here in the details if you want to read it for yourselves. Everything I've said today is basically what it's saying here to do with inflicting route state in order to do route damage and deal very high route damage. But to me, route damage isn't high enough and it's not worth it, while you can just go down a super tanky route and actually just siege as often as you want to siege, which is the main thing of this march. So with that, you know what to do, guys. Smash a like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. And until the next one, stay safe, stay sneaky. Peace out.